صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد خلقنا الإنسان ونعلم ما توسوس به نفسه ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد. إذ يتلقى المتلقيان عن اليمين وعن الشمال قعيد. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. ولقد خلقنا الإنسان ونعلم ما توسوس به نفسه ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد. إذ يتلقى المتلقيان عن اليمين وعن الشمال قعيد. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. وجاءت سكرة الموت بالحق ذلك ما كنت منه تحيد ونفخ في الصور ذلك يوم الوعيد. وجاءت كل نفس معها سائق وشهيد. صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة.
صلوات. Kayamat ban ke din Ashura ka Zainab پہ آیا ہے، قیامت بن کے دن عاشور کا زینب پہ آیا ہے، ہزاروں قاتلوں کے درمیاں زہرا کا جایا ہے، ہزاروں قاتلوں کے درمیاں زہرا کا جایا ہے، کیا ویران ایک جولا اجارا ایک مادر کو، کیا ویرا کی ایک جولا اجارا ایک مادر کو، بتائے قاتل اصغر تیرے کیا ہاتھ آیا ہے، بتائے قاتل اصغر تیرے کیا ہاتھ آیا ہے، قیامت بن کے دن عاشور کا زینب پہ آیا ہے، کہاں ڈھونڈے علی اصغر کو مادر کس طرف جائے، کہاں ڈھونڈے علی اصغر کو مادر کس طرف جائے، اندھیری رات ہے بے شیر نے جنگل بسایا ہے، اندھیری رات ہے بے شیر نے جنگل بسایا ہے، قیامت بن کے دن عاشور کا زینب پہ آیا ہے، صدا زہرا کی آتی تھی اٹھو غازی سہارا دو، صدا زہرا کی آتی تھی اٹھو غازی سہارا دو، میرے بیٹے نے تنہا لاشے اکبر اٹھایا ہے، میرے بیٹے نے تنہا لاشے اکبر اٹھایا ہے، قیامت بن کے دن عاشور کا زینب پہ آیا ہے، سکینہ روئی ہے شاید تماچے شمر نے مارے، سکینہ روئی ہے شاید تماچے شمر نے مارے، بدل کر کروٹ غازی کا لاشا تھر تھرایا ہے، بدل کر کروٹ غازی کا لاشا تھر تھرایا ہے، قیامت بن کے دن عاشور کا زینب پہ آیا ہے قیامت بن کے دن عاشور کا، زینب پہ آیا ہے ہزاروں قاتلوں کے درمیاں، زہرا کا جایا ہے ہزاروں قاتلوں کے درمیاں، زہرا کا جایا ہے۔ الفاتحہ۔
صلوات۔ سکائے سکینہ عباس عباس، سکائے سکینہ عباس عباس، گالوں پہ تماچے یوں ہی کھاتی تھی سکینہ، رو رو کے فقط تم کو بلاتی تھی سکینہ، آ جاؤ خدا را عباس عباس، آ جاؤ خدا را عباس عباس، سکائے سکینہ عباس عباس، تم تو میرے چادر کے محافظ میرے بھیا، تم سو گئے میدان میں میرا چھن گیا پردہ، سر کھل گیا میرا عباس عباس، سر کھل گیا میرا عباس عباس، سکائے سکینہ عباس عباس، سنتی ہوں کہ دریا پہ ہوا قبضہ تمہارا، اے بھیا مگر خیموں میں تلک پانی نہ آیا، پیاسی ہے سکینہ عباس عباس، پیاسی ہے سکینہ عباس عباس، سکائے سکینہ عباس عباس، شبیر کا سر پشت سے جب کھاتا گیا تھا، خنجر کے تلے بائی نے دو بار کہا تھا، آؤ میرے بھیا عباس عباس، آؤ میرے بھیا عباس سقای سکینہ عباس عباس، دیکھو تو ذرا لٹ گئی سرکار حسینی، تارج ہوا اثر کو دربار حسینی، ہم ہو گیا تنہا عباس عباس، ہم ہو گیا تنہا عباس عباس، سقای سکینہ عباس عباس، اللہ کسی کو بھی دکھائے نہ یہ منظر، بے پردہ بہن بھائی کسر نو کے سنا پر، اور بائی بھی ایسا عباس عباس، اور بائی بھی ایسا عباس عباس، سقای سکینہ عباس عباس، گالوں پہ تماچے یوں ہی کھاتی تھی سکینہ، رو رو کے فقط تم کو بلاتی تھی سکینہ، آ جاؤ خدا را عباس عباس، آ جاؤ خدا را عباس عباس، سقای سکینہ عباس عباس، صلوات۔ سورۃ المبارکۃ الفاتحہ۔
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔ ہائے قاسم میں تیرا لاشا اٹھاؤں کیسے، ہائے قاسم میں تیرا لاشا اٹھاؤں کیسے، بولے سرور تیرے مادر کو بتاؤں کیسے، ہائے قاسم میں تیرا لاشا اٹھاؤں کیسے، ریت کے ذروں میں گھوڑوں کے سمو سے بیٹا، ریت کے ذروں میں گھوڑوں کے سمو سے بیٹا،
خود ہی بتلا میں تجھے ڈھونڈ کے لاؤں کیسے، ہائے قاسم میں تیرا لاشا اٹھاؤں کیسے، خاک اور خون میں ڈوبا ہے تمہارا چہرہ، خاک اور خون میں ڈوبا ہے تمہارا چہرہ، اس میں میں پہلے سے تابانی لاؤں کیسے، ہائے قاسم میں تیرا لاشا اٹھاؤں کیسے، اور لے گئے ساتھ ہی رہوار تمہارے تن کو، لے گئے ساتھ ہی رہوار تمہارے تن کو، یہ خبر جا کے میں فروا کو سناؤں کیسے، ہائے قاسم میں تیرا لاشا اٹھاؤں کیسے، مر نہ جائے کہیں تطہیر کی وارث بن میں، مر نہ جائے کہیں تطہیر کی وارث بن میں، تیرے ٹکڑے تیری پھوپھی کو دکھاؤں کیسے، ہائے قاسم میں تیرا لاشا اٹھاؤں کیسے، اور ہاتھ ملتے نہیں گھٹری سے تمہاری ماں کو، ہاتھ ملتے نہیں گھٹری سے تمہاری ماں کو، تیری شادی ہے تجھے مہندی لگاؤں کیسے، कासिम मैं तेरा लाशा उठाऊं कैसे। सूरत अल-मुबारकतुल फातिहा।
बर मुहम्मदिन व आले मुहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मुहम्मदिन व आले मुहम्मद वजल फरज। अस्सलामु अलैकुम जमीआ व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। Mu'minin, today's Ruhani Majlis announcements. Majlis for the Saleh Sawab of Maruma Amina Bai Mustafa Qasim, Marum Mustafa Bai Fazal Qasim, Marum Akbar Ali Ratansi, Marumins of Ismail Qasim family, and Kul Marumins. Majlis by Zehra Bai Muhammad and Nargis Bai Datu for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Zainab Bai Muhammad, Marum Asikina Bai Danji, Marum Amir Bai Muhammad, Marum Tajdin Bai Danji, and Kul Marumin. Majlis by Dr. Murtaza Bai Walji and family for the Saleh Sawab of Maruma Gulzar Bai Parapia, Marum Yusuf Ali Bai Qasim Ali Parapia, Maruma Fatma Bai Hussain Walji, Marum Hussain Muhammad Walji, and Kul Marumins. Majlis by Bande Khuda for the Saleh Sawab of Maruma Ruba Bai Sultan Ali Wali Muhammad Walji, Marum Sultan Ali Wali Muhammad Walji, Marumins of H.M. Nasser family, Marumins of Wali Muhammad Walji family, and Kul Marumins. Majlis by Al-Haj Amir Ali Bai Muhammad Ali Walji for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Muhammad Ali Bai Walji, Maruma Zainab Bai Muhammad Ali Walji, Marum Mohsin Bai Muhammad Ali Walji, Maruma Nyaz Fatiha Muhammad Ali Walji, and Kul Marumins. Majlis by the family of Marum Al-Haj Qasim Ali Bai Jan Muhammad Bamani for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Qasim Ali Bai Jan Muhammad Bamani, Maruma Mehrmanu Bai Muhammad Ali Jadavji Hemani, Marum Jan Muhammad Bai Sivji Bamani, Maruma Sugra Bai Dharamsi Meghani, Marum Muhammad Ali Jadavji Hemani, Maruma Zainab Bai Hemraj, and Kul Marumins. Majlis by the family of Marum Al-Haj Ramzan Ali Muhammad Ali Walji for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Ramzan Ali Muhammad Ali Walji, Marum Muhammad Ali Bai Walji, Maruma Shirin Bai Muhammad Ali Walji, Maruma Maryam Bai Muhammad Ali Walji, Marum Salma Bai Maluma Salma Bai Walji, Maruma Kulsum Bai Bhimji, Marum Ali Bai Bhimji, Marum Akbar Ali Badani, Marum Muhammad Karim Rahmatullah, and Kul Marumins. Majlis by Dr. Hasnain Jafar Ali Danji for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Jafar Ali Bai Danji, Maruma Fatma Bai Jafar Ali Danji, and Kul Marumins. Majlis by the family of Marum Al-Haj Amir Ali Bai Jamal Datu for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Muhammad Taqi Bai Karim, Maruma Amina Bai Haji Muhammad Abdullah, Maruma Sughra Bai Ramji, Maruma Amina Bai Mustafa Qasim, Marum Shaukat Bai Panjwani, and Kul Marumins. Majlis for the Saleh Sawab of Marum Al-Haj Muhammad Bashir Bai Kurji, Marumins of Daya family, Kurji family, and Kul Marumins. You all humbly requested to recite Surah Fatiha for the Marumins. Al-Fatiha. بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات. I now request upon Master Mikhail Walji to come and deliver his 2 minutes speech. Please let's welcome with the loudest Nare Salawat.
Salawat. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anam. Sayyidina Abil Qasimi Muhammad. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Allah says in the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Ahzab, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما آحدوا الله عليه فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا. Among the believers are those who are true to the covenant they made with Allah. Some have fulfilled their vow and others are still waiting, and they have never changed in the least. O Azadar, Karbala was a land where promises were tested. There were those who had given their word to Imam Hussain alayhi salam in comfort, but when the danger came, they turned away. And there were those who came to Imam Hussain alayhi salam with nothing but faith, loyalty, and the willingness to give everything. On the night of Ashura, Imam Hussain alayhi salam gathered his family and companions. He praised and glorified Allah, then told them, O people of my family and my followers, take the darkness of this night as a means to live and save yourselves. These people seek no one but me. He gave permission to every person the freedom to leave, but no one moved. Qasim, still a young boy, asked, "Oh uncle, does my name appear in the list of those who are going to be martyred tomorrow?" The Imam was deeply moved and asked him, "My son, how do you view death?" Qasim replied, "Oh uncle, death is sweeter than honey for me." Then Imam Hussain said, "By Allah, you are among those who will be martyred with me." On the day of Ashura, the time came for Qasim to go to the battlefield. And so he said to Imam Hussain, "Oh dear uncle, it's my turn to go now. Please permit me." The Imam embraced him and they both wept until they became unconscious. After receiving permission, Qasim advanced. Humayd ibn Muslim says that a youth similar to the first sliver of the new moon stepped onto the battlefield. Everybody was amazed and no one knew who this child was. Qasim reached the battlefield with tears flowing from his eyes and said, "If you do not know me, I am the son of Hassan, the grandson of the chosen prophet. By the Lord of the house, I am Qasim from the family of Ali. We possess honor through our relationship with the Messenger of Allah. And this is Al-Hussein whom you surrounded and did not give even a sip of water from the flowing Euphrates. He fought bravely until the enemy surrounded him. He was struck down and fell to the ground, calling out, 'Alas! Oh dear uncle, come to my aid. The narrator says that he could not understand how quickly Imam Hussain mounted the horse and attacked the army. He went on to the battlefield like a swift hunter. When Qasim fell from his horse, 200 horses surrounded him, and Qasim was trampled to death. As soon as the dust settled, people saw Qasim's head in his uncle's lap. Imam Hussain said, "Far be the nation who have killed you, while the enemy on the day of Qiyamah should be your grandfather, the Prophet." One by one, each member of those who were on the list shown to Qasim was slain on the battlefield. Alas, Imam Hussain stood in the desert of Karbala. He said, "O Allah, I have left all creation for your love. I have all for my children so that I may see you. Even if I were cut into pieces in your path, my heart would never incline towards anyone but you." Oh Azadar, Qasim was young, but on the plains of Karbala, he showed the world courage, loyalty, and faith. The lesson of Qasim is this: you are never too young to stand for the right. You are never too young to make a difference. You are never too young to choose the path of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
Per Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala. Mu'minin, this evening we're very honored to have Brother Bakir Datu, who will be telling us regarding Imami rugs. Please let's welcome him with the loudest Nare salawat.
Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On the men's side, you'll see a stool with a musalla or prayer mat laid out. What this is, it's a prayer mat made from the carpets of the Haram of Imam Rizvi alayhi salam. We've undertaken this project to source the carpets, take them, stitch them, cut them, and turn them into prayer mats, and bring them to the UK, and sort of sell them as a project because we believe it helps people gain a closeness to the Ahl al-Bayt. I know a number of you have bought the prayer mats on Laylatul Qadr, and the feedback I received was overwhelmingly positive. So I wanted the opportunity to do this again, and I thank the center for letting me do that. Even if you're not interested in buying a carpet, please come gain some shafa'ah from it. If you're on the women's side, unfortunately, we do not have a stall there. But if you look at the website, Imami Rugs, IMAMIRUGS.com, you can take a look at it there. We do sort of free deliveries in Peterborough. If you have any questions, I'll be in the stall next to the Wudu Khana. Thank you very much.
الصلوات नारे तकबीर नारे रिसालत नारे हैदरी। कासिम ने कहा दिल से कि अब क्या है इरादे, कासिम ने कहा दिल से कि अब क्या है इरादे, सबीर को घेरे है सवार और यादे प्यादे, सबीर को घेरे है सवार और प्यादे, ऐसा ना हो कोई नाम मोहम्मद का मिटा दे, ऐसा ना हो कोई नाम मोहम्मद का मिटा दे, मरने का यही वक्त है हिम्मत जो खुदा दे, मरने का यही वक्त है, हिम्मत जो खुदा दे। देखा सुए सबीर जो हिम्मत की नज़र से, देखा सुए सबीर जो हिम्मत की नज़र से, तलवार उछलने लगी कासिम की कमर से। सलवात।
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. These hands are not hands that are given, but ask of them and they give so freely. Flow with love, flow with passion, for these hands I've seen them give alms whilst in divine exhortation. These hands that speak behead us, yet our stand cannot be diminished, for here is a call that cannot be extinguished, for they are the light that in darkness shine, in the depths of solitude have found solace with the divine. Here are hands that stretch to the torn night sky and pray, and at the break of dawn these hands will break bread with the deprived. These hands that grasp onto the hand of the divine, who respond to God's request and give without any sign hidden, and the divine calls them in an instant. Return to me in a state you are content. Hands that can return a setting sun and split a wholesome moon, that shake when they are in prayer and tremble in ablution. These hands then are not symbols, but are revolutionary stances. Their tongues will still testify, be their heads upon lances. Here are hands that rap against flags of truth, that flutter, that clasp carriers bursting at seams for throats that crave water. Here are hands that will be severed, but hands that never give in to dishonor. Hands that liberate, unshackle, and give flight. How can broken backs and severed arms mend broken souls and lives? And even after severing two arms from Abbas, still they could not get one hand to pledge for them. Hands that display about bravery, that remain in victory. These hands that defend, those hands that felt split open necks of children slaughtered. Here is the hand upon Qasim's chest of final farewells with orphan daughters. These hands that have buried many times over, that have dug into sands and made coffins for 6-month-old babies slaughtered. These hands that have tried to cover fountains of blood that splutter from youthful chests, and at the bequest of a brother, these hands that move blood from eyes so a lover can see his beloved for the last time. Here is the hand which extends to enemies' thirst, who gives water to those that later to his mother curse and will kill and demand his ring from his hand. These hands with severed fingers oppression withstand, and those small hands that curl against their faces from the advances of men, hands that cover ears, bloodied and beaten, hands that protect, and hands that were shackled, hands that are in chains, and hands that beg their uncle not to leave. Here is the baby's hands that coo for thirst, and that woman's hand that have made men's kingdoms quiver, that demand with eloquence their rights once over, that shattered falsehood. These hands, they stitch banners in the camp of despair, hands that only wept in the silence of the night prayer, for each gesture of a hand is a testament to the legacy they weave of Hussein's stand of truth and justice. Till the end, his lovers believe that they stand as a testament that Karbala is alive through the hands that never gave allegiance to tyranny's side, that have clung to supplication and drowned in pain. Here is Zainab thanking God for beauty in treacherous slaughter. These hands, they will never give in to injustice and oppression. These hands that can never give in to unjustly succession, be it from their plots of Saqifa, for oppress them as you wish, but they still will rise like in the desert of Ghadir. They will clasp and shine like upon the alam. They will still flutter with a proclamation. They would rather be cut than to bow to humiliation. And I see them rise. I see them above flags and domes, and in our mother's eyes, in the chant of lovers and in the heartbroken cries. These hands are on chests, and these hands raise to the sky and exclaim, his hand, his hand, his hand it remains. They slaughtered his head, but his hand he never gave. These hands that call out in front of the oppressor and say, join me, Labbaika ya Hussein, with your hands. Labbaika ya Hussein, Labbaika ya Hussein.
Bar Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad salawat. Mu'mineen, with the loudest nara salawat, please let's welcome Sayyid Muhammed Rizvi Sahib for tonight's lecture. Bar Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad salawat.
يا رسول الله يا عالم
حسينيات بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أفضل الموجودات، العبد المؤيد، الرسول المسدد، المصطفى الأمجد والمحمود الأحمد، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع ذنوبنا، صاحب الوقار والسكينة المدفون بأرض المدينة، أبي القاسم محمد. وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم والمنكر فضائلهم وغاسب حقوقهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين. آمين يا رب العالمين. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذ أخرجه الذين كفروا ثاني اثنين إذ هما في الغار إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. for all of the marhumin, shuhada, ulama who have left. And just last night we've had some sad news coming out of Karachi, Pakistan, where a car full of takfiris has rammed into a majlis with some people injured. And as far as we last checked, one small girl who has passed from this incident. It's still early, it's being investigated. Let's remember them with the Suratul Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Tonight, I've had the honor of reciting verse 40 of Surah 9. The surah is known as Suratul Bara'ah, sometimes referred to as Suratul Tawbah. But what's important to know is that throughout the narrations of Ahlul Bayt, this surah was actually never called Suratul Tawbah. As you know, this surah is the only surah of the Holy Quran which begins without Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's a surah of azab, it's a surah of la'an, it's a surah of curse upon the mushrikeen, upon the pagans of Makkah. And so there is no rahmah in this surah, and hence there is no Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And where there is no rahmah, there is no tawbah. And so it was, in fact, the school which was the anti-Ahlul Bayt school, which referred to this surah as Surah Tawbah. And eventually became famous that even today we call it Surah Tawbah. But the reality is that Ahlul Bayt always refer to this as Suratul Bara'ah, from tabarra or tabarri, which is to curse, la'an. And for those who have investigated this, the ulama and muhaqqiqeen, who have commented on this, they have written that it was the people who had a problem with the tabarra or the bara'ah side of things, that they pushed this other narrative and started calling it Surah Tawbah. No bara'ah, no la'an, tawbah. And so it became popular, and even today we use Surah Tawbah. But ideally, from the narrations of Ahlul Bayt, we should use the word or the name Suratul Bara'ah. Recite salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This verse that I recited is known as Ayatul Ghar, the verse of the cave. And this verse has been a verse of much attention throughout the centuries, of much polemics, munadhira, debate between Sunni and Shia in regards to the superiority of either Ali ibn Abi Talib or the first Caliph Abu Bakr. And the people who have used this verse, they've used this verse to prove, according to them, the superiority and the imamat and the khilafat of the first caliph. Okay? Let me translate it for you. إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ. And when they forced him out, exiled him from the city, referring to the Prophet of Islam. When they forced Rasulullah out of the city, ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ, he was the second of the two. إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ, and when they were both in the cave, the Prophet and his companion, the famous night of Hijrah, when the Prophet of Islam and the companion was in the cave. إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ, and then when the Prophet said to his companion, لَا تَحْزَنْ, don't grieve, don't fear. إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا, Allah is with us. So, the famous commentator of the Holy Quran, Fakhruddin al-Razi, Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, one of the major mufassirun of the Holy Quran, عند Sunnah, with Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. He has used this one ayah, and not even the whole ayah, a part of this ayah, Thani Ithnain, the second to the Prophet. He has used this Thani Ithnain, the second to the Prophet, to pen down 12 virtues, 12 merits, 12 fada'il for the Caliph. This one word has been used by Fakhruddin al-Razi to argue that because of this, the first Caliph has 12 merits that Ali ibn Abi Talib doesn't have. And in the words of Sheikh Nasir Makarim al-Shirazi of Qom, a marja, he says, I've read all of them. None of them have a reasonable base. None of them have a leg to stand on. But the point being that this verse is a verse that has been given to the first caliph as a medal of honor. Yes? And they tried because Ali ibn Abi Talib has almost 1,000 verses for him. So they said, let's give one to him. And so they gave him this verse. Our ulama say, if you really dig deep and read between the lines of the verse is not praising the caliph, it's actually condemning him. It depends how you depends how you read. Some people just read over it, and some people read between the lines. Okay? So now, let me give you a bit of background. Amongst one of the ulama, one of the scholars who wrote a book, who authored a book on the greatness of the first caliph because of this verse of the cave. Ayatul Ghar. Ghar is cave. Ghar Hira, Ghar, the Sur with the Ghar Sur. This is the Ghar where the Prophet hid on the night of Hijrah. The night when the pagans decided that it is now time. Abu Talib has died. We're going to attack the house of the Prophet. We're going to kill the Prophet. We're going to assassinate the Prophet tonight. And Allah's messenger comes out and he says, Allah has commanded me to make Hijrah. I must leave Makkah and go to Medina. And as you know, the people of Medina waited for him. When he comes, they all recited for him, Tala'a Badru Alayna, the moon has come upon us, and they welcomed him. This is Hijrah, in short. And the night in which the Prophet left Ali ibn Abi Talib on his bed was known as Laylatul Hijrah. The night in which Ali ibn Abi Talib slept in the Prophet's bed. In short, this is the background of the ayah. They enter this cave because the pagans are looking for them. In fact, they have hired specialists who can look at footprints and see which direction did Muhammad go to. In fact, they say that they were so professional at what they did that they could look at the feces of animals, the droppings of camels, and from that they'd be able to tell you how old they are. As in, you find feces, they'll look at it, they'll hold it and say, this is 2 days old. That person is 2 days ahead. This is how good they were. And boy, they were good. They brought the pagans to the mouth of the cave. This is history. And so the verse came down. And when they exiled him out of the city, Thani Ithnain, he was the second of the two, إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ, and when they were in the cave, إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ, and when he said to his companion, لَا تَحْزَنْ, don't fear, إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. They said, Subhanallah. He has the company of the Prophet. Nobody was with the Prophet when he was with the Prophet. They said, Subhanallah, this proves that if anyone is the wasi of the Prophet, it's the Caliph. Why? Because if the Prophet had died in that state or was killed, who would he make his wasiyah to? Of course, him. They say, Subhanallah, he is with the Prophet. He enjoys privacy with the Prophet. Seclusion with the Prophet. Nobody was in the ghar except the Caliph. And so him being in the cave with the Prophet is greater than getting left behind sleeping on a bed. As in, if the Prophet really cared for Ali ibn Abi Talib, he would take Ali and leave him to die. Yes? This is their aqidah, but not mine. You're looking at me like, this is theirs. They say if Ali really mattered, if Ali really was the rightful caliph, so Allah should save his life. Because he needs to live after the Prophet. Yes? And so this proves that Rasulullah, because he dearly loved his companion, he takes him and he protects him. And because of that protection, the ummah was blessed with the caliph. What do we say? There's a scholar by the name of Nizamuddin al-Nishapuri, originally from Khuzestan, Iran, Persian, originally Sunni. As you know, a majority of the Persian Sunni scholars are Persian, right? In fact, some of the most hardcore of the Sunni scholars have come from Iran, traditionally. Most of the books, the authors are Persian, Iranian, Bukhari, Tirmidhi, and most of them are non-Arab. Nishapuri, of course, means Nishapur, from Nishapur. This scholar Nizamuddin authors a book because of this verse. They said this verse is so important. I'm going to write a book in honor of the Caliph. A number of years later, there is another scholar by the name of a Shaheed, who's a Shaheed, a Sayyid Qadi Nurullah Shushtari. Maybe many of you have heard the name, and maybe many of you have not heard this name. They call him a Shaheed al-Thalith, the third martyr. You know, you've heard of Shaheed al-Awwal, the first martyr, who's known for his famous book, Al-Lum'atu Dimishqiyya. This is the book, heavy book on fiqh, heavily taught in the Hawza. They say if you haven't studied this book, you haven't graduated from the Hawza yet. That's how important this book is. Al-Lum'atu Dimishqiyya. And he wrote this book in 7 days when he was in prison. And eventually he was killed. He was beheaded. Why? Because some of the contemporaries, the non-Shia muftis, came and said, he's a Shia. He curses the caliphs. And so he was brought in front of the authorities, or they were Ottoman at that time. They had him beheaded. And because of the way they killed him, they called him the first Shaheed. Even though there are many Shuhada, but the way they, in the marketplace, they hit him and they took his head off. Shaheed al-Awwal. About 2 centuries later comes another person, again, from the same area. They both belong to South Lebanon. Lebanon has a history of Shiaism, since some people have traced the history of Lebanon, South Lebanon, back to Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, because Abu Dhar was exiled towards Sham. There comes another scholar known as Ash-Shaheed Al-Thani, the second martyr, Zainuddin. He is the one who writes a commentary on the Lum'ah, on the book of fiqh, Al-Lum'atu Dimishqiyya. He writes a commentary, again, which is taught in the Hawza, in the classes of fiqh. Okay? These two are known, but there's another Shaheed which is not known too much. He's known to the Ahlul Hawzati wal Ilm, or to the Khawas, or maybe some who take an interest. He is a Shaheed al-Thalith. Sayyid. He's a Sayyid. He's originally from Iran. He's Persian. But where is he buried? Shaheed al-Thalith. You'll be surprised to know that he's buried in Agra, India. You know why? Because this was a man who was so good at what he did in fiqh, in usul, in aqa'id. He was an adib, a poet. He knew literature. He was a master of all of the 4 madhahib. Despite being a Shia Ja'fari, he knew the Hanbali, the Hanafi, the Maliki, the Shafi'i. He knew all of the schools of the thoughts of the Sunni madhab. When he left Iran for India under the Mughal emperors to go and spread Shiaism into India, he lived for a time in Taqiyya because the situation was such that he couldn't openly declare. But because of how good he was and how high his reputation was, the king of that time, Akbar Shah, offered him a job that many of the muftis would have died for. What job? Why don't you become the Qadi al-Qudda, the chief justice, the chief jurist? You pass, you will sit, and you will give judgment. Mughal kings. India's rule of Mughal kings is a huge history of the Indian subcontinent. Akbar Shah was the one who offered him a job. He said, I'm not interested. He says, no, do it. And when they push him, he says, I'll take it on the condition that I will only rule according to the 4 madhahib al-arba. Either the ruling will be from the Hanafi school of thought, or from the Maliki, or from the Shafi'i, or from the Hanbali. He said, okay, great, what else do we want? So he takes on the role. So take pride in this. The first Qadi al-Qudda under the Mughals in the city of Lahore was a Shia Sayyid from Iran. Shia. Until one day, some of the muftis, non-Shia of course, they went to, Akbar died, his father came, Jahangir. They went to Jahangir, the king of India. Most of these, architectural advancements that took place in India, and by India I mean pre-partition India, Pakistan, Lahore included, Peshawar and Delhi and Agra, they were built under the Mughals. They came to him, they said, this man is a Shia. They said, no chance, my father chose him, I trust his choice. He said, no, he's Shia. He said, how do you know? He said, because every judgment that he gives is based according to the Ja'fari. He said, no. He accepted the job on the condition that he will judge only according to Madhahib al-Arba. They said, no, you don't get it. He's smart. He finds within the 4 madhab that ruling which matches the Ja'fari. A mu'min is smart, huh? Like, for example, if Shias, they pray with their hands down. And so do a group of the Sunnis, the Malikis. So what he will do is, okay, the Malikis say this, do it like this. So they say, look at all of his judgments. They're all Ja'fari, but he just finds a way to link it to one of the madhahib, because you'll find it somewhere. I said, really? I said, really? But they say that Jahangir didn't pay much attention to him. Also, Jahangir was under a bit of pressure because his wife Nur Jahan was Shia, for whom he built the Taj Mahal. But the muftis didn't have enough. So they said, look, we'll send a spy who pretends to be a student to learn from him, to befriend him, to go and visit him in the evenings, have private tuition, private lessons from him, and eventually we'll get somewhere. And so they sent a spy who spent some time with him, he got to know him, started studying with him, and some time went by. He discovered that at night, when everybody sleeps, he puts on a candle and he's writing a book in defense of the Shia faith known as Ihqaqul Haqq. When Haqq establishes itself. He brings the book to them, they bring the book to the king. They said, look, this book, Ihqaqul Haqq, the establishment of the madhab which is Haqq. What is in it? Everything that praises the Ja'fari madhab. Everything that praises the Shia. As a result of that book, Jahangir had him lashed a number of times, 50 lashes or whatever. It is said that he didn't even reach half of the lashes. The Sayyid died under that. His body was thrown in trash until eventually they were buried. And it is said that Nur Jahan had him buried and she had those muftis killed after. Because she was a Shia, Persian Shia. Khair. The point being, this is Shaheed al-Thalith. He writes a book to reply to that Nizamuddin al-Nishapuri who writes a book on the verse of the cave. What does he call it? Kashful Awar fi tafsir ayat al-Ghar. Uncovering the flaws in the interpretation of the verse of the cave. So he writes a book, the Nishapuri, the Sunni. He says this verse is amazing, it proves everything for the Caliph. He writes a book in response, uncovering the flaws when it comes to interpretation of the Ayatul Ghar. When the Sayyid is, when he passes, another Nasibi Wahhabi rises from another area in India by the name of Allahabad. City in India? Allahabad. Muhammad Fakhir Allahabadi. He writes another book to respond to Ash-Shaheed al-Salis, Durratul Tahqiq fi Nusrat al-Siddiq. Pearls of research in defense of the truthful Siddiq. You know who the Siddiq is, right? Well, after him comes another response from where now? Lucknow. Ayatollah Sayyid Mir Hamid Hussain Lucknowi Musawi writes a book in response to this Nasibi Allahabadi who responds to Shaheed al-Salis, and his book is called, look at the names of the books. His book is called Al-Azb al-Battar fi Naqzi Tamassuki bi Ayat al-Ghar. The cutting sword which cuts through this argument of the cave, of the verse of the cave. Look at the ayat. Now you understand, some people say, I hear this, Pakistani and Indian ulama are so heavy on polemics, munadhara and debate. That's because you don't know the history. This land has a history of polemics. The best at polemics were those scholars of the subcontinent. And the scholars of Iran and Iraq agree. I mean, where did the debate of Peshawar Nights take place? So when you say, why is it the Pakistani ulama? They're all on polemics, heavy. So now blood is in the water that we drink. It's in the history. And hence we are amongst those that from history until now have been at the forefront of polemics. And you can see the history. And by the way, this is not known so much, but quickly, like we have a school in Najaf, 1,000 years old, a house of Najaf. You have a house in Sheikh Tusi developed that. House of Qom by Sheikh Al-Ha'iri. You had a house in Hilla in the 13th, 14th century. That was run by Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, the famous Allama al-Hilli. It was so good that it put Baghdad out of business. But maybe a lot of people don't know that 200 years back there was a house in Lucknow when these scholars were active that I've just mentioned. And like Hilla has died, the house of Hilla it was very active. But now there's no house in Hilla as such. And same thing with Lucknow, it still has it, but it's not at its peak that it used to be. But the books that have, in the words of Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Milani, who's in Qom right now, from the Milani family, he said, when it comes to imama and wilaya of Ahlul Bayt, the best manhaj, the best methodology to teach that is the one that comes out of Lucknow, India. And so he now has a foundation where he brings the books from there that don't get the attention that they deserve. Maybe some of them are, rotting away. He brings them into Qom. He writes a summary. He reprints them and publishes them and then brings them out. Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Milani, may Allah lengthen his life. Time is less, and my introduction got longer than I had expected. So whatever points I have now, I'll give it to you before I end. Allama al-Shahid al-Thalis writes a response to Nisha Puri's argument. He says, look, if you say that he was with the Prophet on the night of Hijrah, so all of that I said for this. So now you've got to pay attention. He said, if you say that he was with the Prophet, number one, historically it's not established that when the Prophet left, he had anybody with him. There's no dalil of that. No one. Even they don't have a dalil of that. Yeah, he was in a cave. But when the Prophet left Mecca for Medina, nobody was with the Prophet. Yes? In fact, the Quran says, وَإِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ أَخْرَجَهُ when they force him out, when they drive him out, when they expel him. One. أَخْرَجَهُ. This damir, this pronoun is one. Allahu. Allah is one. أَخْرَجَهُ. That means one person. According to the Quran, one person left Mecca. If it was two, it is أَخْرَجَهُمَا. Or if there was more, أَخْرَجَهُم. One person left, and we know that when Rasulullah left, he only told Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ya Ali, I leave tonight. And so we have in the narrations that when the Prophet had left, the first Khalifa comes out of his house looking for the Prophet. He knocks on the door of the house of the Prophet, he comes inside, he finds Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ya Ali, where's the Prophet? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Allah has commanded the Prophet to migrate. He's gone towards the wells of Maymun. There's an area. He's going in that direction. And the tradition said that now he catches up with the Prophet. And if somebody catches up with you, the Prophet's adab and akhlaq was that he wouldn't kick anyone out. It's us. Sometimes we get really worked up with people and we run out of patience and, out and I don't want to see you again, don't want to talk to you again. This is rahmatan lil alameen. This is rahmatan lil alameen. His mercy is such that he tolerated. And so, for the So to say that the Prophet took him is not something that can be proven. But if you caught up with the Prophet, sometimes the uninvited guest turns up. It happens. Allama Sayyid Qadi Nurullah Shushtari Shahid Salis, Shahid Agra. What does he say? He says, when he replies to him, says, Ali ibn Abi Talib was left there because the Prophet didn't care about Ali. The Prophet cared about the companion who took him. You know what he says? He says, no. He took him with him because he was a Siddiq, which means a truthful person, a person who never lies. He was scared that if he had left him and the pagans got hold of him and they asked him, where is the Prophet? And he's a Siddiq, right? He doesn't lie. This is the Aqidah of the Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. That he has never lied, he never lies. Al-Shahid al-Thalith, Al-Sayyid Nurullah, rahimahullah. He says, no, it's not that the Prophet didn't left Imam Ali. He said he had to, because he was too truthful. And if they had got hold of him, perhaps he would have exposed the location of the Prophet. And he trusted Ali ibn Abi Talib that Ali would not say anything. Yes? Number one. Number two, when they say Thani Ithnain, what do they say? They say, look, he's a second. Ali was left there. He's a second. Nobody was there. One of the ulama says, he says, how do you know that if the Prophet had asked him to stay, he would have stayed? The Prophet asked, Ayyukum yabitu ala firashi. Which one of you will sleep in my bed tonight while I leave? Wa ana adman lahu al-jannah. Admanu lahu al-jannata. And I will promise him paradise. The one who sleeps in my bed. I will promise them paradise. The hadith says everybody is quiet except Amir al-Mu'mineen. Again, the Prophet says, Ayyukum yabitu ala firashi. Which one of you will sleep on my bed? The Prophet is guaranteeing paradise. And yet, nobody wants it except Ali ibn Abi Talib. Free paradise. Nobody wants it except Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. So he says, Shahid al-Thalith says, then why is it that he didn't jump at the opportunity of paradise where Ali jumped at it? Yes? And there is no guarantee that if the Prophet had asked him instead of Ali, why don't you sleep here because they might attack me, that he would have agreed. We don't have any evidence to suggest that he would have agreed. Yeah? Because the bravery of Ali is known and the bravery of the Caliph is well known as well. He said, this point that they raise, a Thani Ithnain, the second of the two. He says that's just representing repetition. A number. Yeah, he was second of the two. But he says, but even with that, there's a problem. Why? Because your own historians have written when they entered the cave, the Caliph was muqaddam, the Prophet was muakhar. Which means the Caliph enters the cave first and the Prophet enters behind him. Thani Ithnain. So he's saying what you're using as the second of the two to praise the Caliph, actually this is where Allah refers to the Prophet. Yes? It was a habit, to take things and give it to the Khulafa. Like what some of the names of Imam Ali that were given to the Khulafa. He said, number one, it's Allah referring to the Prophet. And your own narrations, your own hadith work, biography work of the Prophet suggests that he enters first. He was in a rush to get in, right? The Prophet is outside, he's inside. And the Prophet comes in after. He says, even if you flip it back to how you want to interpret the ayah, because the debate is on the interpretation of the ayah, he says, if you say he's the second of the two, what do you mean? It says, An-Nishaburi says he's the second in the words that, in the meaning that if there's anyone who has ilm after Rasulullah, it's him. If there's any greatness after Rasulullah, it's him. He's with the Prophet in the cave, he's with the Prophet, he's buried next to the Prophet, in the mahafil, he would sit next to the Prophet. He says, no, there is a clear tradition where once a group of people came to the Caliph. He said, that cannot be, because this contradicts many of the narrations. For example, Jalaluddin as-Suyuti records this tradition. Once somebody came to the Caliph, he said, you are the Caliph. And we have heard that the Caliph knows the complete Quran. This ayah of Surah Al-Abasa says, وَفَاكِهَةً وَأَبَّةً. Fakiha, we know, it means fruits. What is this abba? You know what he says? أَيُّ سَمَاءٍ تُذِلُّنِي وَأَيُّ أَرْضٍ تُقِلُّنِي إِذَا قُلْتُ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا أَعْلَمُ. He says, the Caliph now says, which sky would shade me and which land would carry me if I said something about the Quran which I didn't know? He says, what is this ab? وَفَاكِهَةٌ وَأَبَّةٌ. In Surah Abasa. It's a verse of the Quran. وَفَاكِهَةٌ, fruits. Abba, what is that? In other words, he says, I don't know. So you have two types of caliphs. You have a caliph who says, I don't know. And then in Kufa, you have a caliph who says, Saluni, Saluni, qabla an tafqiduni. Yeah? So you have two types of caliphs. There's one who says, which sky would shade over me and which land would carry me if I was to give my opinion about something which I had no idea about. They came to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. They said, yeah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's failed to answer the question. What is the jawab? The Prophet says the Imam says he claims to be the Caliph of the Prophet. And he doesn't know simple ayat. Where fakiha means fruit. Abba means vegetation. Simple ayat. So again, from this point, which has come up in their own books, we know that he cannot be second in ilm, second in knowledge. Some of them said, no, he was so beloved to the Prophet that whenever the Prophet would, and subhanallah, you know, there is lying, and then there is this. They said that when the Prophet missed Jannah, he would kiss the Caliph's beard, grey beard. Yeah, I tell you, there is lying, and then there is this. Recite salawat, please. There's a lot more to say, but I want to wrap up. Time is short. And so, Ash-Shaheed al-Thalith replies to each and every point. Yes? But then there's another point, which our ulama say does not go in the Caliph's favor. Why? Because the historians, and this is Sunni historians that say, you know, when they were in the cave, the historians have disagreed. Was it 3 nights or more? So there is the opinion of 3 to 10 nights that they waited there. And as you know, the pagans, they reached the cave, and some of them came and stood right and looked right inside. But one of them said, look, there is a spider's web here. And there's bird, you know, pigeons have given eggs, there are birds here, they're still sitting here. And there's a tree right in front of it. So it's highly unlikely anybody's in there. It is said at that moment when they came so close, the Caliph began to cry. He got scared. It's in the Quran. That the Prophet had to tell him, La tahzan. Don't cry. You know, at a time like this, where even a pin drop silence can give away your location. At a time when you don't need noise. He starts to make noise. And then there is a group of our scholars that say, well, perhaps it was intentional. Okay? Anyway, the point is that he started to make noise. And the Prophet said to him, La tahzan. Inna Allah ma'ana. The scholars have written that those 3 to 10 nights that they were there, according to the Sunni historians, the daughter and the son of the first caliph would come every night and bring food for them. So that means that the company is not exclusive. And not only that, some of them have gone as far as written that the camel who they rented the camel from, the guy with the camel, you know, used to rent a camel. Like you book an Uber today. There the Uber was a camel. You rent a camel, yeah, you pay him. He walks you to your destination, you get off and he comes back. You could rent a camel, or you could rent a camel and man and van. Yeah, you rent a camel. So they rented a camel and man. Even the man was there. Yeah? So there is no exclusiveness in that regard. So that is defeated with all of these other narrations. You know, if you have these narrations, then you cannot be so sure. You cannot be so sure. And finally, when they say, well, the cave or the bed, we say here there is a man who cried that the Prophet had to remind him, Allah is with us. They say Allah is with him. No, but the Quran says, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Allah is with everyone. Saying that he was two, there was one and then there was two. There was one, the Prophet, and he was the second. 1, 2, ثاني اثنين is like saying, Allah says in Surah Al-Mujadila, مَا يَكُونُ مِن نَجْوَةٍ ثَلَاثَ إِلَّا هُوَ رَابِعُهُمْ. Whenever there is 3 of you in a private conversation, remember that Allah is the 4th. And whenever there is 5 of you, Allah is the 6th. So if being the second is a merit, then Allah is the 4th. Allah is the 6th. To summarize and to end, the cave or the bed. Here there is a person in the cave who's with the Prophet and is crying. Here's a person who sleeps under the shadow of the daggers and the swords. And when he gets up, they said, Ya Ali, how did you sleep that night? He says, Wallah, that was the most peaceful sleep of my life. Why? Yeah. Why? Because I knew that I am putting my life on the line for the Habib of Allah. So in a nutshell, to end here, Ali ibn Abi Talib, his bravery was such. And one of the ulama says, you can't even compare Ali's bravery to his bravery. Because in the first battle of Islam, there is no mention of him. In Badr. Uhud, there is a mention of him, which is not great. So I won't go there. Let's stick to Badr. Badr, there's no mention. One of the ulama writes, Marhum, Ayatollah Sayyid Ja'far Murtada al-Amili of South Lebanon, was a muhaqqiq. Marhum, rahmatullah alayh. He writes that there is no mention of him coming to defend the Prophet in Badr. There's no mention of him even lifting a sword. Forget about that. There's not even a mention of him moving his lips to defend the Prophet. And here is a man who lies and buys that, and wallah, that night, you know why that night, the Shia was bang on about this one night. You know why? Because had that night been any other way, the Prophet would have been assassinated. Quran would have not reached your homes. You would have not known Salat or Saum or Hajj or Zakat or any of that. Sharia would not have been in existence. Ali that night, by lying on the bed of the Prophet, not only saves the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam his life, he saves Sharia, he safeguards the nuzul of the Quran, and he brings you Iman and Islam. Yes? This is why we bang on about the night of Hijrah. There's more to say. These are books that you have to go and read. But I end here. Ali ibn Abi Talib had no fear. The word fear was not in the dictionary of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And such is the case for the grandson of Ali ibn Abi Talib, who says, Al-Mawtu ahla min al-asal. When Imam Hussain asks Qasim, كيف الموت عندك يا بني? How do you find death? This is the grandson of Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is the son of Hassan al-Mujtaba. He says, Wallahi ya am, al-mawtu ahla min al-asal. Imam Hussain asks Hazrat Qasim, tomorrow everybody will die. On the night of Ashura, Imam Hussain gathers everyone. And Qasim stands up. He says, Oh Uncle Hussain, will I die? Is my name on the list of the shuhada, of the martyrs? You know what Imam Hussain alayhi salam says? He says, even the 6-month-year-old, that baby will not survive. And at that time, it said that Qasim becomes emotional. He says, Oh Uncle Hussain, will they enter the khayma? Such was the honor of the men of Banu Hashim, that they would not tolerate another man enter where their women be. And you know how Imam Hussain calms him down? Even though they will enter. Do you know how Imam Hussain alayhi salam calms him down? He says, no, my son, I will bring out Ali al-Asghar onto my hands. Al-Qasim alayhi salam, just the thought that maybe the enemies of Yazid will enter the Khaymah had his blood boiling. Now I ask you, imagine the heart of Imam al-Sajjad. Ajrakum ala Allah. When the final nights, Ya Shi'ata ala Muhammadin. These are the final nights, the nights of Girya. Imagine what it felt like at that moment when Imam al-Hussain says to Qasim, "Oh Qasim, no, I will bring them out. This is the son of Hassan. Today, Hussain will lift his body from the ground in a state that half of his body will be hanging from the other half." Ajrakum ala Allah. Imam al-Hussain loved his brother Hassan. If there's anything that reminded Imam al-Hussain of Hassan, that was Qasim, Qasim. Ajrakum ala Allah, O Shia ala Muhammadin. Tonight, this night, dedicate this night to Imam al-Hassan. You know, when Imam al-Hassan was dying, he was poisoned. He says, bring my son Qasim. They bring Qasim and Qasim was only 3 years of old. They bring him and they put him on the chest of Aba Abdullah, on the chest of Abu Muhammad al-Hassan ibn Ali. Imam Hassan says, "Oh Qasim, you are young." And he says this to his mother. He says, Qasim is young, but I see a day will come where my brother will be all alone. I tie a taweez to his arm. There was a message in it. Imam Hassan had tied a message to the arm of Qasim. And he says to Qasim, "Oh Qasim, you're young, but if ever there comes a day which is the most difficult day of your life, open this taweez. Ajrakum ala Allah." Wo din aa gaya. وہ دن آ گیا کہ جناب قاسم نے کہا اب اس سے مشکل دن کیا ہو سکتا ہے. جب جناب قاسم نے متعدد مرتبہ امام حسین سے اجازت مانگی کہ چچا مجھے اجازت دیجئے. جناب قاسم کے بارے میں مشہور ہے، بار بار یہ کہتے تھے کہ جب تک قاسم کے ہاتھ میں تلوار ہے نا، کوئی حسین کے قریب نہیں آ سکتا، کوئی میرے چچا کے قریب نہیں آ سکتا. بس عزادارو آ گئے جناب قاسم خدمت امام حسین میں، کہا چچا جان مرنے کی اجازت دیجئے. بس ایک مرتبہ امام حسین نے قاسم کو سر سے پاؤں تک دیکھا اور شاید اپنے بھائی حسن کی یاد آ گئی. جناب مولا حسین نے قاسم کو سینے سے لگا لیا اور مقتل کے روایت کا جملہ ہے کہ اتنا روئے ہیں قاسم اور حسین کہ دونوں بے ہوش ہو کے گر پڑے. یعنی جہاں جناب علی اکبر کو رخصت کیا تھا نا مولا حسین نے، اس وقت بھی امام حسین روئے نہیں تھے اتنا، لیکن جب قاسم کو رخصت کرنے کی باری آئی تو مولا حسین اتنا روئے کہ دونوں بے ہوش ہو گئے. اجرکم علی اللہ. بس اب ایک مرتبہ جب یہ اٹھے ہیں، جناب قاسم کہتے ہیں مجھے اجازت نہیں ملی. جناب قاسم خیمے سے باہر آئے، ایک گوشے میں پریشان حال جا کے قاسم بیٹھ گئے. ہاں زادارو اپنے سر کو جھکا لیا قاسم نے. پھر یاد آ گیا کہ باپ نے وصیت کی تھی کہ ایک ایسا وقت آئے گا جو بہت مشکل ہوگا. عاشور کے دن سے زیادہ مصیبت والا دن کیا ہو سکتا ہے. قاسم نے وہ تعویذ کھولا، کیا دیکھا؟ باپ کی وصیت تھی. کیا لکھا ہے؟ اے میرے لال قاسم، ایک دن آئے گا کہ میرا بھائی دشمنوں میں گھیر لیا جائے گا. اے قاسم میں حسن موجود نہ ہوں گا، لیکن اے قاسم اگر بھائی میرا اجازت نہ دے تو یہ تعویذ پیش کر دینا. بس ایک مرتبہ قاسم خوش ہوئے، دوڑتے ہوئے امام حسین کی خدمت میں آ گئے. کہا چچا جان اب تو اجازت دے دیجئے، یہ میرے باپ کی وصیت تھی، میں اپنے باپ کی وصیت پہ عمل کرنا چاہتا ہوں. بس عزادارو ایک مرتبہ میرے مولا حسین نے اس تحریر کو چوما اور آنکھوں سے آنسو جاری ہو گئے. ایک مرتبہ اپنے ہاتھوں سے قاسم کو تیار کیا. قاسم اتنے چھوٹے ہیں کہ میرے مولا نے امامے کا کپڑا دو نصف کیا. ایک کپڑا ماما باندھا سر پہ اور دوسرا کپڑا کفن کی طرح جسم پہ باندھ دیا. لیکن کہا اے قاسم جانے سے پہلے زینب سے اجازت لے کے جاؤ. اب سنیں یہ جملے. جب ایک مرتبہ قاسم زینب کے خیمے میں آئے, زینب نے جب سر اٹھایا تو ایک جملہ کہا, انت یا ابا محمد, اے بھیا حسن کے آپ آ گئے ہیں. ایک مرتبہ جناب زینب نے دیکھا کہ شاید مولا حسن آ گئے ہیں. کس قدر امام حضرت قاسم مشابہ تھے امام حسن سے, بس زینب کو یقین ہو گیا کہ اب قاسم جا رہے ہیں. عزادارو, یہ بچہ اتنا چھوٹا ہے. مورخین نے لکھا, مقتل نویس نے لکھا کہ یہ بچہ اتنا چھوٹا ہے کہ جو تلوار کمر میں باندھ رکھی تھی نا, وہ تلوار زمین پہ خط کھینچ رہی تھی. یہ بچہ اتنا چھوٹا ہے. حمید ابن مسلم کہتا ہے کہ جب قاسم فرزند حسن جب مقتل میں آئے ہیں نا جنگ کرنے, تو سب نے کہا کہ کیا چاند سا چہرہ ہے, کیا نورانی چہرہ ہے. اسی اسنا میں ایک ظالم آگے بڑھا, وہ کہتا ہے کہ تمام عرب کے گناہ مجھ پر ہوں, میری ذمہ داری ہوں, اگر میں اس جوان کی ماں کو اس کے ماتم میں نہ بٹھاؤں. حمید ابن مسلم کہتا ہے کہ وائے ہو تجھ پر, یہ بچہ اتنا خوبصورت ہے کہ اگر یہ مجھے مارے بھی میں اسے واپس نہیں ماروں گا. تیرا دل کتنا سخت ہے. کہا نہیں, میں اس بچے پہ حملہ کروں گا. حمید ابن مسلم کہتا ہے مجھے نہیں بھولتا, اس بچے کے پاؤں میں نالین تھی اور ایک نالین کا تسمہ ٹوٹا ہوا تھا. عزادارو, بس میں کیسے یہ سخت جملے ہیں, آخری جملے میں کیسے یہ جملے پڑھوں. قاسم نے جنگ کی, بہت بہادر تھے قاسم, بڑی شدید جنگ کی, لیکن ایک مقام پہ قاسم نے دیکھا کہ پاؤں میں تسمہ ٹوٹا ہوا ہے. اب تھوڑی دیر کے لیے قاسم, وہ بچہ ننھا سا بچہ ہے, بہت چھوٹا ہے, ابھی بالغ بھی نہیں ہوا. ایک مرتبہ جناب قاسم جھکے ہیں, وہ ظالم قریب آیا جس نے کہا میں اس کی ماں کو اس کے ماتم میں بٹھاؤں گا. قاسم نے جھکا تاکہ تسموں کی اصلاح کرے. یہاں ظالم کی تلوار اٹھی ہے. ایک مرتبہ قاسم زمین پہ آئے, کہا یا عمّا, اے چچا حسین اپنے بھتیجے کو سنبھالیے. روایت کہتی ہے کہ جیسے حسین کے کانوں میں قاسم کی آواز آئی, حسین نے ایسے دیکھا کہ جیسے کوئی شیر دیکھتا ہے. ایک مرتبہ گھوڑے پہ سوار ہوئے, کہا اے میرے بھتیجے تیرا چچا آ رہا ہے. تلوار نکالی حسین نے, ایک مرتبہ حملہ کیا. وہاں ایک مرتبہ کسی نے کہا ہٹ جا, حسین آ رہے ہیں. حسین بڑے غضب میں ہیں. حسین ایک مرتبہ شیر کی طرح حملہ کرتے ہوئے قاسم کے پاس آئے. مقتل میں کیا لکھا ہے, جب حسین یہاں سے آئے نا تو دشمن کی فوج دشمن خوف کی لہر دوڑی. جب حسین آئے, اب اس میں کیا ہوا کہ جو دائیں کے فوجی تھے وہ بائیں بھاگے, اور جو بائیں فوجی تھے وہ دائیں بھاگے. اب قاسم کا جسم گھوڑوں کی ٹاپوں تلے. اجرکم علی اللہ. آخری جملہ, مولا حسین قاسم کے جسم پہ آ کے ایک جملہ کہتے ہیں, اے میرے قاسم, تیرے چچا کے لیے بہت مشکل ہے, تو چچا کو پکارے, تیرا چچا کچھ کر نہ سکے. ایک مرتبہ قاسم کا سینہ اپنے سینے پہ رکھا. اب جب حسین اٹھے ہیں نا تو قاسم کے پاؤں زمین پہ خط کھینچ رہے تھے. اس آخری جملہ زحمت تمام, اس گنج شہداء میں آ گئے جہاں اکبر کا لاشا ہے, جہاں جوانان بنی ہاشم کے لاشیں ہیں. ایک طرف اکبر کا لاشا, حسین نے ساتھ قاسم کا لاشا ایک طرف رکھا. اب حسین بیچ میں بیٹھ گئے. جانتے ہیں مولا حسین نے کیا کیا, ایک ہاتھ قاسم کے سینے پہ رکھا, ایک ہاتھ اکبر کے سینے پہ, وہ سینہ جس میں برچی کا پھل تھا. سر بلند کیا, کہا پروردگارا میری کمائی لٹ گئی, حسین غریب ہو گیا. الا لعنت اللہ علی القوم الظالمین وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم حسین.
قاسم نوشاد کا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین پیٹو سر اہل عزا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین مادر قاسم نے لاش پہ رو کر کہا آ گئی تم کو قضا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین سن کا کروں کیا بیان سال تھا وہ 13واں ہائے پر ارمان چلا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین باپ کا نور نظر اماں کا لختے جگر خود پسند آ گیا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین اماں سے رخصت طلب کیوں نہیں ہوتے ہے اب کیا ہوا تم کو بھلا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین لاشا قاسم پہ جا پیٹ کے سر یوں کہا کیا ہوئی ہم سے خطا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین مرنے سے تیرے پسر ہوئیں گے ہم در بدر گر ہوا ماتم سرا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین اعظم کل دے بری ہوتے ہیں اب شاہدی کون ہے جو لے بچا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین کیا کروں یوسف بیاں روتی ہے سب بیویاں لب پہ تھا اے نوجوان لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین قاسم نوشاد کا لاتے ہیں لاشا حسین یا حسین یا حسین
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین اس گری روئے بہت اس گری روئے بہت شہ کو حسن یاد آئے لاشا قاسم کا نظر آیا 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 حسن یاد آئے اس گری روئے بہت اس گری روئے بہت شہ کو حسن یاد آئے لاشا قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے لاشا قاسم کا نظر آیا یاد آئے لاشا قاسم کا نظر ہائے قاسم نہ تیرے ٹکڑے بدن کے ہوتے، ہائے قاسم نہ تیرے ٹکڑے بدن کے ہوتے، روک سینے سے ہے روک سینے سے لگا یا تو حسنی یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسنی یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم ٹکڑے قاسم کے چنے اور عبا میں ڈالے، ٹکڑے قاسم کے چنے اور عبا میں ڈالے، باندھ کر لا شاہ ہے باندھ کر لا شاہ اٹھایا تو حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، مہندی ارمانوں کی ہاتھوں میں لگا کر مانے، مہندی ارمانوں کی ہاتھوں میں لگا کر مانے، صحرا ماتے پہ ہے صحرا ماتے پہ سجایا تو حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا، فیض شبیر جو قاسم کا جنازہ لائے، فیض شبیر جو قاسم کا جنازہ لائے، زخمی تیروں پہ ہے زخمی تیروں پہ جنازے پہ حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا، اس کری روئے بہت اس کری روئے بہت شہ کو حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، لاش قاسم کا نظر آیا حسن یاد آئے، یا حسین
حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، ہے قاسم 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 ہے قاسم، مل کے ہے قاسم 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 ہے قاسم، کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم ہے قاسم ہے قاسم ہے قاسم ہے قاسم مل کے ہے ماشاء اللہ ہے قاسم ہے قاسم ہے قاسم ہے قاسم کبھی لاشا دیکھ کے روتی تھی کبھی غش کھا کے گر جاتی تھی کبھی لاشا دیکھ کے روتی تھی کبھی غش کھا کے گر جاتی تھی پامال ہوا تھا بھائی جہاں پامال ہوا تھا بھائی جہاں اس خون پہ گر کر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم 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 کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم مل کے ہے قاسم قاسم ہے قاسم ہے قاسم ماشاء اللہ قاسم ہے قاسم فروان نے کہا بیٹا قاسم کہہ دینا دادی زہرا سے فروان نے کہا بیٹا قاسم کہہ دینا دادی زہرا سے غربت کی کمائی ٹکڑوں میں غربت کی کمائی ٹکڑوں میں دیتی ہے سجا کر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم 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 کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم ہے قاسم ہے قاسم ہے قاسم کبھی لاشا دیکھ کے روتی تھی کبھی غش کھا کے گر جاتی تھی کبھی لاشا دیکھ کے روتی تھی کبھی غش کھا کے گر جاتی تھی پامال ہوا تھا بھائی جہاں پامال ہوا تھا بھائی جہاں اس خون پہ گر کر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم 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 واہ ویلا ہے واہ ویلا 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 سب مل کے کرو اب اہل عزا واہ ویلا ہے واہ ویلا مل کے واہ ویلا ویلا ہے واہ ویلا واہ ویلا سن کے ماتمی ہے واہ ویلا اسلام نبی کا بچایا ہے تکبیر کا دیپ جلایا ہے قرآن کا مان بڑھایا ہے توحید پہ گھر کو لٹایا ہے شبیر کا ماتم شبیر کا ماتم واویلا یہ اہل عزا کا ہے نوحہ واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہم شکل پیغمبر مارا گیا 6 ماہ کا اصغر مارا گیا 6 ماہ کا اصغر مارا گیا عباس دلاور مارا گیا شبیر کا دلبر مارا گیا اکبر کا ماتم واویلا اصغر کا ماتم واویلا زینب کے لبوں پر تھی یہ صدا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا ماشاءاللہ لا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا سب مل کے کرو اب اہل عزا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا کیسے ہو رقم احوال جفا آدان ستم کچھ ایسا کیا آدان ستم کچھ ایسا کیا قاسم کا جسد پامال ہوا بے حال ہوئی ام فروا قاسم کا ماتم واویلا قاسم کا ماتم واویلا قاسم کا ماتم واویلا بے کس کا ماتم واویلا قاسم کا غم ہے اور کبرا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا اجرکم اللہ جیو ماتمی واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا ہے واویلا کیا غربت تھی تنہائی تھی جب شام غریب آئی تھی جب شام غریب آئی تھی ایک ظلم کی بدلی چھائی تھی پیغام اسیری لائی تھی غربت کا ماتم واویلا اطرت کا ماتم واویلا سب اہل حرم کی چھین ردا واویلا ہے واویلا 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 سب مل کے کرو اب اہل عزا واویلا ہے واویلا 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 ہے واویلا ہم شکل پیغمبر مارا گیا 6 ماہ کا اصغر مارا گیا 6 ماہ کا اصغر مارا گیا عباس دلاور مارا گیا شبیر کا دلبر مارا گیا اکبر کا ماتم واویلا اصغر کا ماتم واویلا زینب کے لبوں پر تھی یہ صدا واویلا ہے واویلا 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 مل کے واویلا ویلا کیسے ہو رقم احوال جفا آدان ستم کچھ ایسا کیا آدان ستم کچھ ایسا کیا قاسم کا جسد پامال ہوا بے حال ہوئی فروا قاسم کا ماتم واویلا بے کس کا ماتم واویلا قاسم کا غم ہے اور کبرا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا واویلا ہے واویلا 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 وہ عابد بیمار تھا وہ عابد مل کے تھا وہ عابد بیمار تھا وہ عابد بیمار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی لاڈلی شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی سینے پہ جو شاہ کے پلی سینے پہ جو شاہ کے پلی جس کی عبا بن میں جلی جس کی عبا بن میں جلی منہ پر تماچوں کے نشان مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین 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 یا رب حق زہرا توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار کربلا ہو یا رب حق زہرا توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار کربلا ہو بلند آواز میں مل کے پڑھے یا رب حق توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار جو عرض کربلا ہے ہر عرض سے سوا ہے اس خاک کربلا میں شہ کا لہو ملا ہے ہر لا دوا مرض کی یہ خاک ہی دوا ہو مرنے سے پہلے یارا دیدار کربلا ہو بلنداز میں یا رب حق توفیق یہ عطا ہو مرنے سے پہلے دیدار کر میں بھی تو ماتمی ہوں ذاکر ہوں سیدہ کا نوحہ پڑھا ہے میں نے ہم شکل مصطفیٰ کا، ہم شکل مصطفیٰ کا، اس ذاکری کا میری قسمت میں یہ صلہ ہو، مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار کربلا ہو، یا رب توفیق یہ عطا ہو، مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار کربلا ہو، یا رب نماز شب میں بس یہ دعا کروں میں، کچھ دیر اس زمیں پر مجلس بپا کروں میں، مجلس بپا کروں میں، ہر ماتمی کے لب پر، ہر ماتمی کے لب پر ہر دم یہی دعا ہو، مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار کربلا ہو، بلند آواز میں یا رب حق توفیق یہ عطا ہو، مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار، ننھی سی جس لحد میں سوتے ہیں ابھی اصغر، اس پر چڑھاؤں گا میں پھولوں کی ایک چادر، پھولوں کی ایک چادر، پرسا وہاں ہو ایسا، پرسا وہاں ہو ایسا پہلے نہیں ہوا ہو، مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار کربلا ہو، یا رب حق توفیق یہ، مرنے سے پہلے یا رب، یا رب حق زہرا، مل کے پڑھیں، یا رب حق زہرا، بلند آواز میں مل کے باؤ سے بلند، یا رب حق زہرا توفیق یہ عطا ہو، مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار کربلا ہو، دیدار کربلا ہو، یا رب حق زہرا توفیق یہ عطا ہو، مرنے سے پہلے یا رب دیدار کربلا ہو، برائے تعجیل ظہور امام زمانہ باز بلند صلوات۔
فاتحہ۔
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، السلام علیکم یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیکم یا نبی اللہ، السلام علیکم یا امیر المؤمنین وابن سید الوصیین، السلام علیکم یا فاطمة الزہرا سیدۃ نساء العالمین، السلام علیکم یا حسن المجتبی، السلام علیکم یا ابا عبداللہ الحسین وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك، علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن، أجرى تعالى فرجك وسح تعالى مخرجك وظهورك، وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك بشيرتك وزوارك، السلام عليك يا أهل بيت النبوة جميل ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Rama حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكن أرضك ومكيه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم